talk about the best ancient cities in the world. 1. Memphis, one of Egypt's most important ancient cities. One of Egypt's oldest and most important ancient cities, Memphis was the capital of the Old Kingdom. Memphis occupied a prominent position at the beginning of the Nile Valley and is close to the Pyramid at Giza and the necropolis at Saqqara. Such was the symbolism of Memphis that pharaohs throughout Egypt's long history would be crowned in the city. Memphis was one of several major cities expanded by the great pharaoh Ramesses II in the 13th century BC. The most important monument in the city was the Temple of Ptah, one of the oldest Egyptian gods. Despite being superseded as the capital by cities such as Thebes, Memphis was still hugely significant as a cultural and religious metropolis. When the Assyrians invaded Egypt in 671 BC, Memphis was razed to the ground twice, but the city was rapidly rebuilt due to its religious importance, even though Egypt continued to be subjugated by foreign powers. In 525 BC, the Achaemenid Persian king Cambyses II captured Memphis, which became the capital of the Persian satrapy of Egypt. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great was crowned pharaoh at Memphis after seizing Egypt from the Persians. After he died, Alexander was entombed at Memphis, and one of his commanders, Ptolemy, established the Ptolemaic dynasty. In 196 BC, Ptolemy V issued a decree, which was transcribed onto a tablet in 3 languages by scribes at Memphis. This was the Rosetta Stone, one of the most important archaeological discoveries in human history. 2. Thebes, mausoleum of the great pharaohs. Thebes eventually replaced Memphis as the capital of ancient Egypt, becoming one of the most powerful ancient cities in the world. As early as 3200 BC, Thebes was an incredibly important city due to its worship of Ammon, one of Egypt's most prominent gods. In around 2055 BC, a Theban aristocrat named Mentuhotep II conquered and united Egypt, moving the capital to Thebes. When Mentuhotep II took over, he began to increase the grandeur of Thebes. The massive Temple of Karnak was one of Thebes' most breathtaking monuments and has never been surpassed as the world's largest religious structure. Thebes was displaced as the capital by the controversial pharaoh Akhenaten in 1345 BC, but was restored by his famous son Tutankhamun. As some of Egypt's greatest pharaohs ruled from Thebes, a vast necropolis began to form on the western bank of the Nile, the Valley of the Kings. The mortuary complexes also included those of Ramesses II, as well as the huge mausoleum of Queen Hatshepsut. The city itself hugged the eastern bank, becoming famous for its beautiful buildings and temples. At its height, Thebes probably contained around 80,000 people. Thebes was sacked by the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in 663 BC during his invasion of Egypt. He had the city rebuilt, and it continued to be one of Egypt's most important cities. But in the 1st century AD, the Romans arrived and destroyed Thebes, leaving the once great city a ruined husk. 3. Nineveh, infamous bastion of the Assyrians. Under the Neo-Assyrian Empire, Nineveh became one of the most infamous ancient cities in Mesopotamia. During the early periods of Assyrian rule, the city sprawled across the east bank of the river Tigris and was a wealthy, important urban center. King Sennacherib made Nineveh the Assyrian capital in 705 BC and expanded the city. 15 monumental fortified gates were built to protect the city, which also boasted advanced infrastructure such as aqueducts. As the empire reached its peak, wealth and slaves flooded into Nineveh. But it was Sennacherib's most ambitious project that most epitomized the grandeur of the capital, the Palace Without Rival, also known as the Southwest Palace. Each of the palace's 80 rooms was decorated with intricate carvings depicting Sennacherib's triumphs and scenes illustrating Assyrian life. Statues of winged lions with human heads, also known as lamassu, guarded the palace's doorways. Sennacherib's grandson, Ashurbanipal, devoted even more attention to the city. He built an immense library complex, where he hoped to collate writings from across Mesopotamia. Ashurbanipal's collection may have boasted as many as 30,000 clay tablets. Scholars were sent to scour Assyrian lands, collecting various cuneiform texts for the library. But after Ashurbanipal's death, Assyria's brutally oppressed subjects seized their chance for revenge. A coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Persians destroyed Nineveh in 612 BC. Most of the survivors were massacred and the city was torched, bringing an end to Assyrian rule. 4. Athens, the birthplace of Western civilization. Among all ancient cities, Athens alone can be considered the birthplace of Western culture. Democracy, history, and philosophy all flourished under the shadow of the Acropolis. After being ruled by aristocrats and tyrants for centuries, the Athenians revolted in 510 BC. The statesman Cleisthenes established the world's earliest known democracy. All of the free men of Athens had a say in the government of the city. The father of Western philosophy, Socrates, taught his students to question everything. He was forced to take poison after being accused of corrupting the city's youth. But Socrates' ideas endured through his pupil Plato. Xerxes razed Athens twice during his invasion of Greece in 480 BC, but was defeated by an alliance of Greek city-states led by Athens and Sparta. The great statesman Pericles then oversaw a grand rebuilding of the Acropolis on the rocky plateau overlooking the city. Contained within was the Parthenon, an impressive temple dedicated to Athena. The center of Athens was the agora, a civic square, and marketplace. Commodities such as silver, wine, and olives were abundant in Attica's surrounding lands and powered Athens' rise to prominence. Athens then formed a coalition with several other city-states called the Delian League. Expanded across the Aegean by Pericles and generals such as Cimon, the Delian League was a vessel for Athenian power for almost 75 years. But during the Peloponnesian War, Athens was toppled by Sparta, who became Greece's dominant city-state, until Athens' resurgence following the Corinthian War. 5. Alexandria, the shining legacy of Alexander the Great. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great invaded the Achaemenid Persian Empire. After liberating Egypt, the young general founded a new city, Alexandria. He designed the plans for the city himself before leaving to continue his campaign. When Alexander died in 323 BC, Egypt was claimed by Ptolemy with Alexandria as his capital. The new city flourished, becoming the largest metropolis in the world. Ptolemy and his sons began construction on the Great Library of Alexandria, where hundreds of scholars collected knowledge from across the known world. Alexandria became a haven for scholars, and great minds like Archimedes, Euclid, and Heron are believed to have studied there. This jewel among ancient cities was also home to the towering lighthouse of Alexandria, considered to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The lighthouse was finished sometime around 250 BC and stood for almost 1,600 years. It may have been as tall as 140 meters, guiding ships safely into Alexandria's harbor. Alexandria continued as a prominent Mediterranean port until a series of Roman civil wars spread to Egypt. After the death of his rival Pompey, Julius Caesar declared martial law in Alexandria. He deposed Ptolemy VIII and installed Cleopatra on the throne. After Caesar was murdered in 44 BC, the Roman general Mark Antony ruled with Cleopatra as they opposed Caesar's successor Octavian. Following the Battle of Actium, Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide. Now ruling as Emperor Augustus, Octavian rebuilt Alexandria as the center of Roman power in Egypt. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go.